Hello, I'm Paddy Delaney, and welcome to Integrated Infrastructure, a podcast dedicated to bringing you news and views from industry leaders involved in the development, design, construction and management of the many built forms that make up Australia's integrated infrastructure. This is Integrated Infrastructure episode 21, and this week I'm joined by Alison Mirams, CEO from Roberts Pizzarotti. Anyone who knows Alison knows about her work in advocating for a 5-day week and advancing gender equality within the construction industry. In this week's podcast, we talk to Alison about starting Roberts Pizzarotti with a blank piece of paper and the achievements they've had in the first 4 years of business. We talk about why Alison is so passionate about the move to the 5-day working week for the construction industry and the startling statistics that still plague the industry around working conditions, why women leave the industry 39 times faster than men, and why facilities for women in a construction environment have to change. We talk about how Roberts Pizzarotti won the Concord Hospital project with a bid that included a 5-day week and the benefits that they're seeing as a result. We talk about how Green Star buildings have put responsible building at the core of their ratings and why Alison is excited about the opportunity to bake flexible working into the construction industry after COVID. I'm excited to bring you this podcast. I really hope you enjoy it. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Alison. Alison, welcome to Integrated Infrastructure. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. It's fantastic to have you on as a guest. As always, I'm going to kick off by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your organisation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Alison Mirams, I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Roberts Pizzarotti. We are a relatively new construction company. We've been going for nearly 4 years and really determined to build a better way and make some positive change to our industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think we're going to talk about a lot about that today, aren't we? Congratulations on it being 4 years for Roberts Pizzarotti. It's always great to hit milestones, isn't it? What have been the highlights for you so far in your journey?
Oh, look, I think it would be fair to say almost 4 years ago, we started with a blank sheet of paper, and today we employ over 140 people. We today will get completion on one of our first projects. We have 30% of the organisation is female, 65 or 60% of my executive team are female. We have 4 scholarships for women studying construction management at UNSW. And we have been able to, in our very small way, influence the construction industry to try and make some really positive changes for the people that work in the industry now, but almost more importantly for the future generations that are going to follow in our footsteps.
Yeah, fantastic. We were talking about that influence before, and you've been lobbying very hard to influence the industry about shifting to a 5-day week away from a 6 or 7-day week for some people. I know you're very passionate about this and it's an important thing to you. Can you take us on that journey? Where did it start for you? And, when did this become an issue or a realisation?
Yeah, and it is something that I'm very passionate about. When we started the company, like I said, we had a blank sheet of paper. And our business plan was formed by looking back through our careers of what worked, repeat it, what didn't work, or what was awful, don't ever do it again. And when you look at the construction industry, there are a couple of things that are really wrong. We have very high presenteeism where people feel like they just can't get home and they need to be at work all the time. We have a very high divorce rate and we have a very high suicide rate. A construction worker is 6 times more likely to die from suicide than a workplace accident. And a young construction worker is over twice as likely to die from suicide than a young worker in any other industry. And those stats come from mates in construction that are very strong in this area. When you look at those statistics and you're putting a company together, I think it's our moral obligation to try and make a difference. And I can't directly change those statistics, but I can influence them by how we behave. And so that's what we've tried to do, is take advantage of having a blank sheet of paper and really try and make a positive change in the industry.
Absolutely. I'm always staggered and get chills when I hear those statistics, because it's crazy, isn't it?
Terrible.
Those statistics. One of the other stats, I think I've got it here, that I noticed you've written a couple of great articles. The questioning, is achieving equality really that hard, and your hopes for the construction industry. I think one of the things that you quoted was that women leave the industry 39 times faster than men.
That's right. And I have seen so many women leave the industry early because they feel like they can't be on site and have a career and have a family. And so they make the decision early to leave so that they've got time to have a second career. The reality is you can do both, but the industry does need to become more inclusive. And when we become more inclusive, that benefits age, religion, sexual orientation, gender. Like, it just solves a whole lot of issues. But also you actually get diversity of thought, because we can't all be white Anglo-Saxon male between 30 and 40 and solve problems thinking with your whole brain. You need a whole lot of different attitudes and different viewpoints to come together to solve problems. And construction is, solving an enormous problem to build projects. It's constantly about problem solving. So when we change the industry, we'll actually get an enormous benefit to the industry, but to clients and to end users, because we'll build better products.
Absolutely. And if there's ever a time when the industry needs new ideas and, things need to change, don't they? I mean, I think I mentioned that we've been speaking to John Davies from the ACA, and, he's desperate to find the Uberization of the industry. Where's it going to come from? Where are the new ideas coming from? And the
ACA just released a really great framework of how they see the industry changing into the future, and I'd recommend everyone to pick up that document and read it. It's a great document.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's not just the 5-day week that needs to change in the industry to make it more attractive to females, is it? I mean, when I sat down with you a couple of weeks ago, I was a bit embarrassed because you showed me a video from the CFM EU's website of a top tier, building company, site in the middle of Sydney CBD, and the women's facilities on site. And I just thought all women's facilities were, a very high quality now. And there's so much noise out there in terms of what people are doing for women. But I was embarrassed to be so shocked by what I saw. Isn't it just about time that we got these things right and sorted things out and gave people the working conditions that they need to be successful in their jobs?
Absolutely, and it is frightening to see it going on in the year 2020, and we are talking about facilities for over 50% of the population. I think women are just over 50% of the population. My first construction site I worked on in 1998, I didn't have a toilet on site. I had to leave the site, go around the building, past 2 office blocks to get to a toilet that I could use. And in many respects, there was a guy's toilet in the office. They could build a boys' toilet, but not a girls' toilet, which defies logic. But what's almost worse than that was that I actually didn't twig that it was wrong until about 5 years ago. And what you find is, because women are underrepresented in the industry, they really don't complain, and they just accept it and they move on and they make do. And so what we have done very deliberately is said, we need to have female facilities that are the same quality as male facilities. We need to have showers where there are shower doors, not shower curtains. We need to have them lockable so that the girls are safe when they're on site. And it sounds so basic, but it's not. And to every client listening to this, or every financier, when you're on a construction site, I would beg you to go and check out the female facilities. I am now a toilet Nazi. I inspect toilets everywhere I go on construction sites to make sure they're appropriate for women to be on site. And I actually think that the makers of portable toilets have some ownership in this as well. When they send the fleet out, to have showers with shower curtains is just not appropriate. You're not safe as a female on site to shower behind a shower curtain when there are 400 men on site. That's just a safety issue. So I would really ask them to have a look at their fleet and change them so that we actually get, the standard lifts from the manufacturer as well as from the contractors. But yeah, it's an issue, and it is horrifying, and it is astounding to think in 2020 that girls leave construction sites and go to public toilets because that's where they have to go to.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, I think the poignant thing for me was that, I've become a dad in the last few years and seen, my partner go through being a mum and, breastfeeding, expressing milk and all that sort of stuff. And how personal that is and how important it is just to have space to do something like that. And
we have built a breastfeeding facility on our site at Concord Hospital. And I know when we put it in, some of the people on site questioned why we were doing that because there were no children on site. And there aren't children on site, you're right. But if you are still expressing when you return to work, you don't prepare your dinner sitting on the toilet. So why would a mother express milk that she will feed to a baby sitting on a toilet if that's the only private space you have? It's just not right. And the facility might never, ever get used, but it's there if a mother returns to work and she wants to use it. She's got a really safe facility, lovely chair, door that locks, fridge for the milk. These are things that you see put in an office building. Those things should be the same when you walk on a construction site. Just because we're in a temporary facility doesn't mean it should be any worse than being in a permanent location.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that you sort of didn't realise this until 5 years ago. And I loved your anecdote of your interview process for Multiplex at the beginning of your career. And, your second interview was the one where you sort of decided to edit your thoughts about how you're going to work. But was there a light bulb moment for you 5 years ago? Or what was it that sort of made you think, I've got to do something about this?
I think it was just probably talking to more people about my career and people would say to me, how did your career start? And I guess it's when you talk through your career and you hear your words out loud, you kind of go, that's outrageous, really. That's not right. And I need to make sure I'm in a position where I can influence change. And my sphere of influence might not be enormous, but I can influence it, and I can certainly make sure everyone who works for Roberts Pizzarotti or on one of our sites doesn't have the issues that I had 20 years ago when I entered the industry. It would be such a waste if I didn't address those systemic issues for people coming forward. And I feel like it's my moral obligation to do that. So I think that's probably where it came from.
Yeah, fantastic. It's so good. You've not just lobbied and advocated in this area, but you've taken actual steps in the way that you've tendered work and won work as well. You just mentioned Concord Hospital, but can you tell us about that process and about what the mindset was behind, doing what you did in through that tender process?
Yeah, when we tendered Concord Hospital, thinking about the statistics and the suicide in the industry, it just didn't feel right that we could build a project and potentially have someone die from suicide caused by workplace stress when we were building a hospital to make people better. And we said that to health infrastructure. And we gave health 2 programs, and we said there's a 6-day-a-week program and there's a 5-day-a-week program. And the 5-day-a-week program was 10 weeks longer. If we just removed Saturdays from the program, it grew out by 4 months. But if we then said, well, we can do some extra work between 3 and 5 each afternoon, it added 10 weeks to program. And health infrastructure said to us, how much will it cost? And I wasn't actually game to ask the subcontractors how much it would cost. And I said, I don't know, but I can ask. And we went and asked all the subcontractors, and they said, every single one of them said no cost. Do you want a cost saving? And I said, no, if it's a cost saving, you can keep it. I just don't want a cost impost. So the 10 weeks of extra time, our prelims cost for that added 1.2% to the cost. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, we don't use that time. We have engaged the University of New South Wales to study the project. So they are studying our workers, our team. They study 140 workers, and they're studying 8 next of kin of construction workers. And the reason for doing that was that I wanted to see the impact that it had on home life and that it actually made a difference. And hopefully the wives don't say, for God's sake, take my husband back to work. That would be a disaster. And they're going to also, they have a health economist in the team that will give me the cost, the benefit in financial terms to the company and hopefully to the economy of having less mental health issues through working 5 days a week. And we're about halfway through that study at the moment.
And are there any sort of learnings that you've had already, or things that have come out of it that have been positives, or things that you did expect, things you didn't expect?
Yes. So the preliminary findings to date have been construction workers are saying, I love it. They're saying, I'm happier, I'm less fatigued, I'm less depressed, I've got a better relationship with my partner, I have a better relationship with my children, I'm taking my children to Saturday sport, and some of them have said, I'm playing sport myself, which many of them haven't done since they entered the industry, and sport is the great Australian dream. So it's great to see them playing sport. Company owners are saying it's the best site we have, it's the most productive, efficient site we have. The partners are saying, my husband is happier, he is less depressed. And they said, the thing that really surprised me was they said, the 6-day working week perpetuates a gender stereotype that dad is the breadwinner and mum is the carer. They've said, if my husband left me, I'd have nothing. I've got no superannuation because I had to leave working to be available for the children 24/7 because I know I can't rely on my husband to do it because of his working hours. Now, we are not good at bringing women into construction as an industry, but the construction industry is the third largest employer in the country. And what the 6-day week is doing through our survey, the findings are that we are stopping women from working in society because they have to be available for their husband, for their children, because their husband can't do it. So we're stopping women from working. It's 2020. We need to change that. I know I have a big job, but my husband does half of the heavy lifting with my son. He drops off, I pick up, I drop off, he picks up. We cook together. We read to Matthew on alternate nights. It is a partnership. I couldn't do my job if I had to do all of the caring and all of the work during the day. And that is what has really surprised me that's come out of this finding, is that we've actually stopped women from working. And we need to address that.
Yeah. What are the biggest obstacles for this to grow, for this to become a standard, in the industry? What's
been really interesting, and you mentioned that I've posted a couple of blogs recently on LinkedIn. When I watch who likes the blogs, it's actually people on the ground. So it's site engineers, it's project engineers, it's foremen saying, yep, we need to talk about this. What is stopping it is actually the head contractors. And it's what I'm finding is the resistance is in the top of the head contractors saying it'll never work, the unions will never get on board, clients will never get on board, clients won't accept their contracts taking longer. The reality is the union is on board, and we'll talk about that later. What we are seeing out of Concord is that we have greater productivity. So I don't think you'll see working 5 days a week will actually increase construction programs over time. And the analogy I will give you for that is that when you see mums return to work after childbirth, they are incredibly efficient. They come in at 9 o'clock and they leave at 5 o'clock and they get all their work done. They don't talk, they're head down. They know they've got to get to pick up, so they're really efficient. I know it myself. I am far more efficient post-child than I was before. I could sit at the lunch table for an hour and a half and chat. I can't do that now. I know I have to pick that up from school on the days where I'm doing pickup. I know I have to do that. So my time is not my own anymore. All we're doing is putting that efficiency into construction workers. And work will always expand to the time that you allow it. So what we've also found is the subbies are pushing us on programs. So they're saying, we are going to pour that deck on Friday. Normally we pick the program, but the Rio fixers out there said, no, we're pouring Friday, book the concrete, we'll get you there. We'll put in the hours and we'll get you there. And they've done that because they know they get 2 days off to rest. And if we just think about that rest period, not working Saturdays gives construction workers 6 weeks more rest per annum. It is massive. It is not in one chunk, I acknowledge that, but it is 6 weeks out of 52 that they are not at work. That has to be better for people It has to result in productivity. It has to result in improved quality, in improved safety. And what we need to make the change happen is for a couple of clients to say, you know what, safety actually is my highest priority, and I am going to prioritise the safety of the workers, and I'm not comfortable that someone would die from suicide building my project. So let's give 5 days a week a go. And if we get that to happen, the whole industry will shift.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's 150% more holiday a year. It's so much more rest, even if it is sort of, on a weekly basis. I mean, I know that the difference it makes to me when I have a 4-day week rather than a 5-day week, whatever. So absolutely. Hey, you mentioned that just then there's an idea that the unions wouldn't accept certain things and that there'd be pushback from there. And you don't normally imagine that contractors and unions are sort of working hand in hand. But you just mentioned it. You've had a result there as well, haven't you?
We have, and we have worked very collaboratively with the CFMEU, and I acknowledge them and I take my hat off to them. When we started talking about having a 5-day week, it wasn't something that they were keen to talk about. And we kept talking to them over a period of a year, and they heard the feedback from their members on Concord, of their members saying, I really like my weekends, please don't take them away. I'm loving not working Saturdays. And for all the benefits that I've outlined, the union is there to represent their members, and their members were saying this is what we want. And the union has worked collaboratively with us in our EBA to give us a 5-day calendar, and they are 100% on board with it now. And, a lot of people say you can't have a positive relationship with the unions. And I think if you take a combative mindset to that, you can't. But if you take the mindset that we are both completely aligned, that we want the best industry for workers and we want the safest industry for workers, we're 100% aligned. And then it's finding what works for a corporation and what works for the union who represent their members. We've had a great result, and it has been collaborative. It has been, a process and a journey, but ultimately I am completely aligned with their desire to improve the industry. To improve the industry, we have a sustainable industry. It's better for the workers now. It's better for the workers that come behind us. If we can improve productivity, we don't hurt people, the industry will grow, it will get bigger, it will get stronger. What's not to agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned collaboration there, and there's a lot of different forces trying to collaborate at the moment, whether that's the contractors from people like you, there's the ACA. I know that Infrastructure Australia is also talking to the ACA, and there's lots of people making connections everywhere. We've talked about before we talked about the different ways that these things can be influenced. So whether that's through the contractors, whether it is or isn't through the contractors, in your case certainly is, whether it's through government sort of putting pressure on or not pressure, but from the top down in terms of the way that they want their projects delivered. But then there's also some private sector and institutional sort of things happening as well, aren't there? And you posted recently about the new Green Star Buildings rating system and what they've done there. And it'd be great if you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And I will just add, there are certainly some contractors who are absolutely on board with working 5 days a week. And I think Hutchinson have done it for a long time in Queensland. They do a lot of projects in that space. And Lendlease is, very, very big into health and wellbeing and pushing that worker safety as well. So it's, it's quite interesting. There is a camp of yes and there is a camp of no. And it's probably quite evenly split between the contractors as to where they sit at the moment. In terms of the Green Building Council, I can't remember when the Green Building Council was established, but say it was 10 years ago, I'm not sure. When that first came in, everyone kind of poo-pooed it and said, well, it's going to cost more to do. Is your building worth more? Will you really get more rents? And a couple of the big REITs took a stand and said, we're going to make our portfolio green. Fast forward 10 years, Green Star is now business as usual. And if you don't have a Green Star rating on your building, it's really, it's old before it's delivered. Mm. And when the Green Building Council recently went through their review of the Green Star tool, we put a submission to them, and I sit on the cultural task force with government. And government is, as part of their 10-point plan that the government released a couple of years ago, one of those points is about improving the culture of the industry. And they put together a cultural task force to improve the industry. Mm. That task force is coming out with 3 elements. And the culture standard will be giving everyone a time for life and working 50 hours a week, 5 days a week. It will be putting the health back in WHS, and it will be diversity focused firstly on gender and then working through the other diversities. Mm. So as the task force, we put together a submission to the GBCA and we said, look, the Green Star tool really is for the benefit of building occupants once the building is open. But in any given year, we touch a lot of people during the construction period. I know when I was at Lendlease one year, we inducted 24,000 people onto our sites in New South Wales. It's a huge number of people. Mm. But the Green Star rating doesn't look at how we build during construction with the exception of green and natural materials. It doesn't look at what we do to the workers. So we wrote to GBCA and said, can you please start rating when construction commences? And there were 16 signatures to the paper. And it was quite interesting when I went to GBCA and presented the paper and I said, look, it'd be really nice if you could put in mandatory toilets for women, mandatory PPE for women. And they kind of looked at me and said, it's 2020, really? And I said, yeah, really. And so they put it in the first draft and they went out to the contractors and did some roadshows, and a couple of the contractors said, oh, that'll make construction too expensive. One said, we already do it, and the girls in the room nearly choked. And one said, you can't get that stuff in Australia. And the GBCA came back to me and said, wow, I can't believe how backward we are. We need to put this in the tool. Mm. And to their absolute credit, they've put it in the people credits. So the people credit is now that you have to have mandatory toilets on site, PPE for women. You need to do sexual harassment and discrimination training as a mandatory. If you don't do those, you won't get a Green Star rating, no matter how green your building is. And that's the sort of change we need to change the industry, because it's no longer about me lobbying. This is being mandated from above. And if I look at the modern slavery legislation that came in recently, that legislation has made everyone go back and look through their supply chains to make sure that people are being paid appropriately and that they're not working in sweatshops, etc. But I question, what is the difference between a sweatshop in an Asian country and construction workers working 70, 80 hours a week? Everyone instantly went through their supply chain and looked overseas, but I would say to a lot of people and a lot of clients, you actually need to look at the conditions that construction workers on site are working and question, is that actually appropriate? Because I don't think it is. Mm. And modern slavery legislation was introduced and suddenly everyone looked at it. Why do we need a piece of legislation to come in to make everyone look at it? Can we not look within ourselves and go, morally, am I doing the right thing? Because I don't think we are all the time, and we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. It just sounds so obvious and clear when you say it like that. You put up a post recently with is it David Chandler, the New South Wales Building Commissioner?
Yes.
His comment. He said, and I'm interested to know what he meant when he said interim. But he said his interim definition of a trustworthy building was a building that does not harm people while it's being made or once it's been made. It doesn't hurt them economically and it doesn't hurt them emotionally. And that's. Yeah.
And that's what, that's right. We don't want to hurt people. And if I go back to the statistic, a construction worker is 6 times more likely to die from suicide than a workplace accident. All the rhetoric you hear is around safety, fall of materials, electrocutions, being hit by a moving object. Absolutely. But can we just add mental health on? Can we add that piece? And I haven't experienced mental health. I haven't seen it in family and friends. I have lost a best friend who was killed, and the impact on my life was horrific. Now, we can't hurt people when we're building projects. You go to work to earn money to live your life. You don't go to work to damage yourself or to hurt yourself or to, God forbid, be killed. And the industry needs to take responsibility for that. And we need to stop looking at just physical safety. We need to look at physical and emotional safety.
Absolutely. Alison, thank you so much. You talk with such knowledge and authority and thoughtfulness around all these things, and I know that people are going to really enjoy listening to what you have to say about the industry, and especially about the 5-day week and about women in the industry as well. I think the vast majority of people, on hearing what you have to say, will think it's a no-brainer, and
I hope so.
I think so. I really do. But I think there's probably a lot of people out there like me who may be a little bit naive or, complacent, even, dare I say it, about informing themselves or even being able to, be part of this advocacy process. What can people do to support you, to promote the change? If you're a foreman on site, or whether you're a managing director of a contractor, how do people get on board?
Look, I think the best thing people can do is have the conversations. Keep having the conversations and keep challenging. And we are very much an industry that says that's the way we've always done it, so that's what we'll do moving forward. That can't keep working. We need to challenge it. If you're a client, put it on the tender. In tender documents, ask for Dr. Natalie Galea, who's done a huge amount of research and who's doing our Concord research, is very strong in advocating to put gender on the tender. Ask in tenders how many women are in your team, how many women in senior management, how many positions are part-time or full-time. Talk about, can we do this in 5 days a week? Talk about, tell me in your tender about safety, but tell me what you do for physical safety and for emotional safety. And when someone says you can't, ask them why you can't and say to them, tell me why you can. And my father raised my sister and I to say, if you don't know what to do, try something, try anything. If it doesn't work, try something else, but just don't stop trying. And that's what we're doing. We're not going to get it right all the time. We're not perfect, but we're trying. We are trying to make a difference to people's lives.
Fantastic. Well, great advice as well from your father. Final comment, Alison. We always ask people, what are they excited about? What are they looking forward to at the moment? What's that for you?
A holiday.
Holiday, Christmas. Yeah,
it's been a long 2020,
hasn't it?
Look, I think I have been another post I did on LinkedIn is that COVID has been horrific. It has been an enormous challenge for the industry, for the community, for the world. But COVID has had a silver lining, and that is that it put the construction industry into the biggest and the fastest experiment on flexible working. And the number of times I've heard people say that you can't work flexibly on construction sites, but we proved you can during COVID. And I really hope that continues into the future, and that I don't hear people saying, well, you can't be flexible, you can't be part-time. I hope that the collaboration in the industry continues, because during COVID, we lost the power balance. We were all in it together. There was no one had more power. And in that client, contractor, subcontractor relationship, because no one had been through this before and everyone had to collaborate to get through it. And I've never seen collaboration between industry bodies, contractors, subcontractors, clients, and it was wonderful. So long may that continue.
Yeah, fantastic. Really good. Alison, I'm extremely grateful for you coming on today, and I'm so excited about getting this out later in the week. So thank you again for coming on Integrated Infrastructure, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Integrated Infrastructure is powered by North Search, specialists in executive and technical search across engineering, design, construction, property and energy markets in Australia. If you'd like to find out more about North Search or get involved with this podcast, you can click on the links in the show notes or email me directly at the address on the screen. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Integrated Infrastructure. Please tell your friends and colleagues if you did, and we hope to see you again soon.